Hey everyone, this is Mr. Bishop. Today we're going to be talking about Civil War battles. Specifically, we're going to be talking about two today, which is the Second Battle of Bull Run and the Battle of Antietam, which is the single bloodiest day in Civil War history when it comes to the Battle of Antietam. For those of you who want to take your Cornell notes, go ahead and get a scratch paper out and put it in Cornell note style. This focus note for today is what were the significant battles in the Civil War? Again, the focus question will be, what are the significant battles in the Civil War? Okay, we're going to go ahead and we are going to first start talking about the Civil War before we embark on these two battles that we're going to be speaking about today. So before the war begins, you have to realize that the Union is very cocky and overconfident going into the war. They significantly outnumber the South. When it comes to soldier-wise, they have the technology advancements, not only when it comes to communication during the Civil War, but they're also going to be having the technology when it comes to military, naval, so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that the North has, the South does not. Now, one thing that the South has that's going to help them out is they have something to fight for. Many of the people in the North are kind of too far from the battle itself in the way of the thought process. So the South obviously secedes after Lincoln becomes president. After that, you have an abundance of people that basically join the Confederate Army because they're fighting for what they deem as their freedoms. Their freedom to own their slaves, their freedom to be a separate nation from the Union, and that is very important to them. So although they are going to be outnumbered in the Civil War, and even in cases outgunned when it comes to technology, they are going to give the Union a run for their money, especially in the beginning years of the Civil War. Now, another thing that we need to bring up is before the Civil War begins, the Secretary of War under Lincoln ends up going to Robert E. Lee and asks Robert E. Lee to basically control and be the commander of the Union Army. What Lee tells the Secretary of War is that he is a Virginian first and part of the United States second. So what he's basically saying is he's not going to take the position, which he, again, declines and doesn't go with, and that he's going to fight along the sides of Virginia. And the Virginians are in the South, which are the Confederates. So this is going to be a slap in the face to Lincoln, and Lincoln's going to basically do anything he can to tarnish and slander Lee's name throughout the war, in a sense, basically exile him once the Civil War is over. Okay, so let's start off with the Second Battle of Bull Run. So, Second Battle of Bull Run is going to be fought between Major General John Pope and General Thomas Jackson, aka Stonewall Jackson. Lee is going to be there as well as a commanding officer. It's basically going to be looking over everything that's going on during the time period. One thing that you're going to start realizing as we go over these Civil War battles is the Union military changes their generals or the commanding officers like you and I would change a shirt, hopefully every day, right? Maybe not during quarantine, but normally every day. So anytime a Union general ends up losing a major battle, he is basically demoted and someone takes his place. You're not going to see that when it comes to the Confederacy. Lee is going to be able to hold his position for the duration of the war under Davis, Jefferson Davis, the Union president. Okay, so let's talk about the Second Battle of Bull Run. During the First Battle of Bull Run, again, the Union Army is overly confident. They kind of walk through. They think they're going to basically be able to win this war in the matter of months. In a case, in a story that was published during the time period, there's actually people that were part of the North, like citizens, that went and basically decided to have this picnic on this hilltop that overlooked the battle. Terrible idea, right? Not only did they see death and dismay, but as the Union soldiers were, fleeing and retreating, they were fleeing and retreating on these people's picnic, and these people are basically put their lives in stake. None of them end up dying, but it's a pretty interesting story. Second Battle of Bull Run, basically the same kind of concept happens. Pope again goes into this overconfident. He outnumbers the Confederate soldiers 62,000 to 50,000. But he's going to lose this war on the 28th. On the 28th of August, it is considered a stalemate. There's no gain by Pope or Jackson. They basically have their battle out in Gainesville around Bronner's farm, and again, there's no gain, so it kind of ends there. On the 29th day, Pope has this brilliant idea that he's going to basically attack the flank of Jackson over at Stony Ridge. But as he goes over to that flank, he is met by Longstreet and is basically stopped in his tracks. Because of Longstreet reinforcement to Jackson, he is not only able to stop Pope's advancement, but along with the guidance of Lee, Jackson and Longstreet are able to push the Union Army back into basically their territory, and they have to retreat. If you look at Union wounded and casualties, it's around 10,000 men, which is significant. That's almost a sixth of its army at that point in time. The Confederates are only going to lose around 1,300 men and have 7,000 wounded, which a vast majority of them are going to be able to be placed back into the military, those who are wounded. This is another significant victory, and again, basically gives a black eye to Lincoln's war against the Confederacy. So we're actually going to look at why Jackson was able to basically be victorious during this battle. So here's Bronner's farm. You have Sigel, who is one of the commanding generals under Pope during the time period. You have King over here, Patrick's as well, and then Sigel's over on Henry's Hill, which again is a vantage point and high point that looks over the battlefield. Jackson's on Stony Ridge, which is highly fortified by the trees and the forest around it, and also is placed on a hill. Now, Jackson is much closer to his men, and is going to be able to basically signal where they need to go during this duration of the war. You look at Sigel, who's one of the commanding officers. He's quite far away, along with Pope. So Jackson's going to be able to not only see the advancement of Pope's army, but he's also going to be able to tell Longstreet when he comes where he needs the reinforcement. Another thing is, as Pope orders the flank or the attacking on the flank, which is over here, Longstreet ends up stopping that flank, which is going to go around Jackson's backside, and they're obviously at a standstill. With the push from Lee, Longstreet, Hood, and Jackson, they're able to push back Pope and his soldiers, and they have to retreat. So again, we see that loss of life there. Now, the last battle that we're going to talk about today is the Battle of Antietam, which again, if you guys look at the end of the notes, 22,000 people die in the Battle of Antietam. It is the single bloodiest day in American history when it comes to a battle during the Civil War, and I believe even up to even the Vietnam War. So pretty remarkable. As you can see, Pope has basically been demoted. McClellan takes his spot, and he is going to go against Lee. Now, both McClellan and Lee are going to be at the most significant battle of Civil War history, which is Gettysburg, which we're going to talk about later on. This is the first battle that's actually fought on northern soil. It's going to be in Sharpsburg, Maryland. And again, at this point in time, Lincoln is very, very worried that he is going to lose this war because Lee is just out maneuvering and just out strategizing all of his commanding officers. So what ends up happening is, although this battle is considered a victory in the eyes of the Union because they stop the advancement of Lee as well as his commanding officers, it really is just a stalemate. Okay, and both sides, the Union and the Confederate side, are going to have heavy casualties during this battle. Now, the one thing that is quite significant about this battle is that it leads to Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation order. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation basically states that all slaves or African American slaves that are in, these rebellious states of the Confederacy are now deemed free. Lincoln can't do this until he has a victory. And although, again, this is considered a victory in the United States, historians know this is a stalemate, but he's able to place Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, and essentially slaves are free in rebellious states. Now, this does not mean that they're free after the war. That's where we have the amendments that are going to come in, the Civil War amendments. But this gives Lincoln time to get the numbers he needs to create amendments and pass them so African American slaves will be considered free from the time after the Civil War throughout present day. We're going to stop here for today. If you guys have any questions, please go ahead and ask them on my the Flipgrid forum. I hope you guys are doing well, and we'll get going on more battles next week. Talk to you soon.